Oh, I nearly got eaten by a shark.
There we go. So
Oh,
glad you
well,
made
yeah,
it.
it's one of those sharks that has no teeth. Like, it nearly sucked me to death. Well, it wouldn't be a bad way to go. Could be worse.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Laura.
I'm Brittany.
And it is Thursday. And on Thursdays, we wear green. Britt and I, from across the other sides of the world, have managed to rock up today wearing almost the exact same thing.
And you know what's ridiculous is you and I don't wear a lot of color in the day to day. Like, we're pretty plain. You probably wear slightly more than me. I did try and have my year of color last year, but I ended up going back to beige. But this happens so often. When we decide to actually wear a color, we turn up in the same thing
Well,
all the
okay,
time.
and this probably sounds like it's very uninteresting, and we're across that. But this is not just like, oh, we both rocked up wearing black today. We're wearing like bright green
No, like
tops, the exact same color, bright green. The only thing is I'm in a studio, and Britt, you're at home, well, you're at Ben's house. You could get changed, but I like that you refused.
I'm in a wardrobe. I am in a wardrobe, so I could literally put my hands up
Anything.
and shake something and it would fall on me. I could just put it straight on me. But I'm not going to because I'm vibing the green and now it looks like we've got a podcast uniform.
This also reminds me of that. Was it a Channel 9 reporter? I can't remember her name. Who was like, you can't
Shirtgate.
wear the white jacket. Brittany, stop wearing the green shirt. That's how I feel right now.
So we're having Shirtgate.
Yeah, it's Shirtgate. Anyway, look, this is our Ask Uncut episode where we answer your deep, your dark, and your burning, dirty, sometimes not, questions. But today's episode almost didn't happen because I almost died on the way to work today.
What?
I know I like to
What do
make
you
that sound
mean?
dramatic, but it actually was kind of dramatic. So I was
What do you
running.
mean? Literally, we nearly lost you and Keisha nearly had to step in.
Oh, when we talked about this on Tuesday's episode, you could have done the recording from my funeral. Once again,
Oh my God.
good for the downloads.
What happened?
So I had to drop the kids off to daycare this morning. Usually Matt on a Monday and a Wednesday, which are our recording days, Matt kind of does the heavy lifting. But he was out the door first thing this morning to go to the airport because he was flying to Melbourne. So I'm running around. This is why I look the way I look, because of everything I
look
had to do
great.
this morning. So I get the kids ready. I threw them in the car, get them to daycare, and I'm walking out of daycare. I've got a coffee in one hand, I've got my phone in one hand, and right in front of the daycare is like a pedestrian crossing because it kind of, kids and there's a pedestrian crossing there. I wasn't paying any attention. I had my face in my phone, which is stupid, but also,
That is so unlike you, Laura.
but it, in my defense, it's a pedestrian crossing. You just expect people are going to stop. So I'm walking along, and then I could just out of my periphery, I was like, that car feels like it's going dangerously fast for a car that should be stopping. And I look up, wait for it. The car fangs it through the pedestrian crossing. It is an old lady in her 90s driving a Mercedes with the windows down. She's
Probably having a fag out the window. She's having a great old time. She's got like, what's that, John Laws on the radio?
I was like, this is one of two things. Either she's senile and she didn't actually see me and she can't drive and probably should lose her license, or two, she's so old she doesn't give a single fuck anymore. And she's like, I don't have time to stop at pedestrian crossings. I'll take you down, bitch. I don't have that long left. So it was one
Probably
of those
bit of
two.
A, bit of B. She probably hasn't gone for her eye test for driving for like 25 years. She probably can't see. She probably got tunnel vision.
I very much agree. But anyway, to the point where I'm standing on the pedestrian crossing. She's driving through it with her windows down, and I'm talking to her through the window like, what the fuck are you doing? And she just looked at me, but it still didn't register that she'd done something wrong. She's just happy
She's
on
looking
her way.
at you. You're like, don't take your eyes off the road. Keep driving. I keep looking forward. Well, I'm glad you made it.
Thank
I
you.
nearly died while I was on holiday too.
Stop being a story topper. What happened to you?
Oh, I nearly got eaten by a shark.
There we go. So glad
Oh,
you made it.
yeah, it's one of those sharks that has no teeth. Like, it nearly sucked me to death. Well, it wouldn't be a bad way to go. Could be worse.
Brittany has a new fetish and it's being sucked off by a gummy shark in the Maldives. Too far?
Yeah, when you guys said, was it romantic? Boy, was it romantic. Ben was like, hey, what's going on down there? I want a piece of that.
All right, okay. We spoke about this on Tuesday's episode. Normally on Thursdays, we get sidetracked. We talk about lots of other things before we get to unpacking your questions. And we had been receiving some feedback last year that maybe we should focus on answering more questions rather than talking about ourselves for so long. So we're going to take that on board. And we are
here to please you.
This is it. We're here to serve. We have extra questions on today's episode. So this is going to be like a media Ask Uncut, but also over the holidays, we had so many questions come in, and I feel like today is such a great, it's like we've got such a good mix because they're so different and they're so varied. But I just wanted to say a very big thank you if you sent in a question over the last couple of weeks. We are doing our best to get through all of them because honestly, like I said, there's so many.
We have some pretty hectic, divisive ones today as well, don't we?
We almost had like a little bit of a fight beforehand because we didn't agree.
It was not a fight, but it was just a
fight.
Sometimes Laura and I go very different paths to get somewhere, and sometimes there's like some wrestling and jujitsu along the way, but usually we get to the end point. But it just is, it's how different brains work and how different thought processes work. I think it's also healthy to have disagreements sometimes.
I do think that we are both in our own ways quite stubborn. So when we don't agree with each other, we fight harder to like get our point across in order for the other person to understand why we feel the way that we feel.
Yeah, I'm hearing you and I feel you, Laura, but you're wrong.
That's pretty much how it goes down. But before we get into answering your questions, we are still doing our vibes and unsubscribes of the week. Producer Keeshia, welcome back.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Before we get into it, with your vibe and unsubscribe, we do have a little life update from Producer Keeshia. Producer Keeshia, would you like to talk to us about you taking the next step?
I love that I said to you guys, we had a planning meeting last week before, we came back to work for the year. And I was like, guys, I have one life update. And both of you were like, what is it? And I was like, well, I'm not going to tell you because I want to tell you on the podcast. And then both of you were like, we fucking know what it is.
Yeah.
The jig is up. The jig is up. So for the course of the last 10 months, it has been a bit of a running joke on the podcast that my boyfriend Toblerone, who we call Toblerone because unlike us, he's a very private person, can't relate. None of us, we're all oversharers.
Do you know what I think is so interesting about this? Like Toblerone is very private, but Keeshia has no issue with sharing all of his things on the podcast. She just does it with him under the guise of the name Toblerone.
Yeah, but then she tags him on Instagram. So
it doesn't make any sense to me either.
She's like, no one will ever know. Tags on Instagram.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why there is a difference between social media and the podcast, but it is what he has requested. And I kind of go, well, I don't really get to make I don't get to make those decisions. You've told me what you're okay with and I'm just going to play on.
The difference is that I know for a fact that Toblerone does not listen to the podcast. So he's not aware of the things that Keeshia is sharing. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm anonymous. They say Toblerone. People are never going to know. And then Keeshia...
I'm a delicious Swiss chocolate.
100%. The podcast is the lowlights of Keisha's life and her Instagram is the highlight reel. And if you follow both, you get a really good kind of like in-between of everything.
That's a good point.
What is it, Keeshia?
So we have finally dropped the L-bomb. We've finally said, I love you. And it almost didn't happen. Well, okay, so we did speak about this on the podcast because, we're all about feminism. But the reason that I had felt it for so long and that I didn't say it to him and I was waiting for him to say it to me, I guess if I'm being completely honest, like there would have been a percentage of ego involved in it, but it wasn't entirely ego-based. It was more so that for me, I'm a very expressive person. I'm a words of affirmation girly and I tell people how I feel about them all the time. I can be a pretty full-on person. This would be a surprise to absolutely no one. I just know that he's not like that. I know that he's slower to get to the point at which he would be comfortable. And so no part of me wanted to make him feel as though I was like pressuring him into it or rushing him into it. And I also felt like if I were to say it, even though I wholeheartedly meant it, and he wasn't at the point where he was ready to say it yet, I feel like it could have changed like this weird dynamic in our relationship. And I didn't want that to be the case. So I held my tongue, which is, again, rare, and I waited. But when it actually happened, Brittany, I have an absolute bone to pick with our shared child, Delilah, because she nearly ruined it. So we were spending Christmas apart because he's not from here. And so we had this kind of like pre-Christmas dinner booked, and it was meant to be this really beautiful thing. And so I had Delilah with me because you're over in Scotland. And for a couple of days leading up to it, it had just been absolutely pouring down with rain. And if you have an active dog, you know how like detrimental that is to your well-being because you can't take them out for runs and wear them out. So this day it was just pouring down with more and more rain, and I was like, look, I'm just going to take her to the beach. We're going to go for a run. We're going to get wet. Like I've just accepted we're both going to be drowned rats. I'm going to come home. I'm going to wash her. It'll be fine. Delilah and I go to the beach. We're running up and down the beach. She's having the best time of her life. And it's on the part where we're about to get back to the car and I'm about to drive home. And she looked at me and she made eye contact.
Here we go.
And she was like, I'm going to fuck your life. That's
Truly.
what Delilah does. Delilah's like, she's like an evil little assassin. She's like, what can I do to make your life hell?
She took off. She found a bunch of dead birds. And when I say she rolled in them, she didn't just like once up and down. She was rolling around in these things, like trying to cover every orifice of her body in dead bird scent.
Cute.
I eventually got to her. So she's now soaking wet. I'm soaking wet. She's in dead wet bird. I get back to Toblerone's house. I'm washing her head to toe. She's hating life. I blow dried her at home. And by the time I got back, I was like, you know what? I just actually can't be bothered. I cannot be bothered to do this nice dinner. Like my energy is completely gone. So we ended up getting takeaway and we had this really boring dinner at home. We were doing our present exchange. I was in the filthiest mood you could ever imagine. And he turns to me and he's like, I love you, sweetheart. It just came out of absolutely nowhere in my mind. Like it was just something that I hadn't expected.
That was it.
That was it. It was like, because he had been planning on doing this really nice Christmas dinner. You know, he said that he'd been thinking about it for quite a while and that he wanted it to be this really nice special moment. But it wasn't a special moment.
Can I just say the way you said it, I love you, sweetheart. It's like he resigned to the fact. He was like, guess it's time. Yeah, I love you, sweetie.
I think it was because of how bad my mood was. Like I was just so pissed off at the world because was
it a proper love declaration, or it's almost sounding a bit like it was looking at you like a bit sympathetic, like you're in the bad mood. He's like, I love you.
Okay.
You know, like you know how there's that different tone.
Has he said it more than once since?
Yes.
Ah, see,
Yes.
the floodgates are open.
Yeah, I turned to him and I was like, I've been waiting a long time to say that to you. And he's like, look, I have as well, but I wanted it to be a nice moment. And I just kind of resorted to the fact that that wasn't going to happen tonight as I had initially planned. But yes, to summarize, we have now said, I love you. We've also now moved in together. Things happen in a weird order in our relationship.
Wow, 100 miles an hour, doesn't it?
Crawling to the line, or it's the fastest thing you've ever experienced. So that is my life update. And thank you to all of the very beautiful people who have messaged me throughout the course of the last 10 months telling me how long it took for your partner to tell you that they love you, because I felt that. I really felt supported by all of your messages.
She needed the validation.
Well, guys, let's get into vibes and unsubscribes of the week, because I have an unsubscribe this week, which is controversial, but I have strong feelings about it. Keeshia, what is your vibe?
Well, my vibe for this week comes off of the back of you guys speaking with Mark Manson. So I've started listening to his podcast, and there's someone who joins him on his podcast a lot, and that guy's name is Byrne. Now, Drew used to be a behavioral neuroscientist, and he now calls himself a content nerd for Mark Manson. So he's worked for Mark since 2014. They have a really close relationship. And so much of what he was saying on the podcast, I was like, wow, this guy has like an amazing amount of insight. I find everything he says really interesting and quite nuanced. Like he often has a different perspective to what I naturally would have thought. Similar to Mark though, you know, like he tells it how it is, but it's not always what you think you're going to hear. Anyway, Drew actually has a newsletter of his own, and it is called Traction. And the latest one that he dropped was titled Do It Your Damn Self. And there was this part of it, and he said, going through the struggle is where the rewards lie. Not just the money and the recognition, but the feeling you get when you see something come together that you did your damn self. So it's about kind of that satisfaction you get out of something when you really feel like you've earned it, and how you can sit in that joy of it for so much longer when you truly feel like, not so much that you've earned it, I guess, but that you've done so much in order to put yourself in that position.
Well, I guess it's this idea, right, of when you have done it your damn self, it kind of like broadens your perception around what you're able to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, okay, I didn't think I could do that thing. Whether I mean, for some people, it could be something stupid like installing a mirror. That's my next DIY project is I'm going to install this mirror in our house. I know that's where my brain went to. But like, you know, me 4 years ago, if you'd said, Laura, you need to drill a hole and do X, Y, Z, I would have been like, that's outside of my remit. But I think anytime you expose yourself to doing something that you've never done before, that was a little bit challenging, you learn a new skill, you can then sit in the reward of being like, okay, I'm really confident in the fact that I can do things I didn't know how to do, and I can do things I thought were hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what this particular newsletter was about. I know that we all love Mark Manson's newsletter, and so Drew has one of his own. I'll link it in the show notes for you. It is called Traction, and I really think that you guys will enjoy it. Short reading. It's like short bursts, which is good for my brain. So I think it'll be good for you guys.
Okay, well, my vibe is, you guys know I'm a true crime junkie. I'm sick for it. So there's a Netflix documentary. It's a docuseries, 3 parts that's going bonkers at the moment. It's called American Nightmare. So if you haven't watched it, you've probably seen it. You know how they pop it up because it's trending. You've probably seen it, not knowing what it is, so not wanting to click on it. American Nightmare, it's a true story about a couple named Denise and Aaron. I won't go too much into it, but they're dubbed the real life Gone Girl. So you remember the movie Gone Girl that went viral? They are kidnapped. Basically, she's kidnapped from her home one night and completely gone missing in the most unusual of ways. Like, the kidnapping is something that feels like it should be a made-up story. All eyes go onto the boyfriend, Aaron. He swears to God that he had nothing to do with it. And then it goes into depth about the police investigation and where things went wrong and what really happened. And I don't want to tell you too much because I don't want to spoil it, because I hate a spoiler. But what I will say is I was hooked the entire 3 episodes. And at the end, I was just left furious. Like, I was absolutely furious at the police department in America. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want to ruin it. But I've never led you guys astray. So this is hands down my recommendation this week. If you watch it, let me know what you think about it.
I've seen the first episode of this, and I know producer Keeshia has also watched quite a bit of it. It is brilliant. And I think the thing that is like, and what you touched on, Britt, but it's the malpractice of the police. And it's this idea that people are coming forward with their story and that they're not being believed by the police because they have an agenda around it. It's also really interesting. Once you've watched it, also go and look up the 2 people that it's based around. Go and look them up on social media. And I think like being able to see their story now and where they're at now based off what was happening to them then is also really interesting. I kind of did an Instagram stalk on them and I was like, like it's nice to look into their lives and where they're at now as well.
Do you know what I really love about it? And this is a little bit more from like a societal lens, is that I think we are seeing so much more content now that is this pushback to the whole believe victims. You know, I know it's something that we really have humongous issues with here in Australia, and this is an American version of it. But for so long, victims have not been believed. And I think it's also a very interesting insight into the policing of police. And we haven't had access to that for very long. You know, I think it's really this introduction of social media and entertainment companies like Netflix that are responsible and have taken the power back, because if people are not doing their job, like in this case, the police fell short is not even, that's the tip of the iceberg. I don't know what words I would use to describe the malpractice that they were doing. If it weren't for things like that we have now, like social media or Netflix, shining a light on situations like this, I wonder how long we would have gone on with these corrupt systems, and also victims spending so long not being believed and not being, you know, their investigations not being taken seriously. So,
Well,
yeah.
It's the visibility, right?
Yes.
Because back in the day, the only way that you would ever get your story out, like I remember, like if something happened and someone was angry about something, it was like you write into the paper or you write into the morning show or something to try and get your story out there. The only other thing which I think is important to note is that it kind of ties into this idea that when you're not a perfect victim, which we know that in cases of domestic violence, in cases of sexual assault, in cases of abuse, it is very rare that there is a perfect victim. What this kind of unpacks is that when you are an imperfect victim, when you've done things that maybe the police see as being not exactly how you should or shouldn't have behaved, the likelihood of being believed is even lower.
It's not even just the not believing of the woman. because the person that isn't believed at the beginning is Aaron, the boyfriend. So first of all, it was, we're not going to believe you. We think you've done something to her. Where is she? Where is she? He pleads, 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 not me. Then when she's found to have been kidnapped, they just switch sides. And all of a sudden it's, we don't believe you. We don't believe you're kidnapped. Like they just completely, I don't want to, excuse my French, they completely fucked and butchered this They completely butchered this investigation from the second he walked in to report it. It's truly wild, and it's one of those things that you have to see to believe.
Oh, we'll link that in show notes, and that is on Netflix. The one that I went, I'm going to keep this short and snappy because I feel like some people are going to agree and some people are going to deeply, deeply disagree. My unsubscribe for the week is Saltburn. I have watched it and I don't really care for it, and I think it is weird and the grave scene and the bath scene, just too weird for me. But second to that, I also, and I think this is where it might come as controversial, I didn't believe in the fucking
Just
balloons.
keep going, it's fine.
I felt as though the chemistry between the two main actors, the boys, being best friends, I didn't think that the chemistry was believable. And I say this because the main actor, Jacob Elordi, he is this beautiful, successful, he is the most popular kid at university. He is ridiculously wealthy. Like it goes into kind of his family and how insanely wealthy his family is. And he befriends possibly the biggest loser from the school, like the most socially awkward, the most like outcast, has no friends, is really hard to connect with. And I just didn't believe that the chemistry between them. And I think it's because they were trying to establish that they had this like deep friendship, but all of the establishment of the deep friendship was done through weird movie montage flashbacks. But when it comes to the dialogue between the two characters, there was nothing convincing about it at all.
I completely disagree with you. I don't think that was the plot at all. No, I think you're made to feel that someone is going to die, right? Like, you know, but you don't know who. You don't know who is going to turn and be the killer or the baddie in this. You're made to believe that he is there, this like nerdy type. You're made to believe he's there because he's a nerdy type, that relationship is forced. They're not actually best friends because there's all these references throughout the whole thing like, oh, you're just another one. Don't worry, you won't last long. There's all of these little throwaway comments that make you believe that maybe they, like, I was led to believe when I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is what my guess is as the movie was unfolding. My guess was that he was there, this nerdy guy, and it was going to result in a hunt. Like they were going to release him on the grounds and everyone got to track him down and hunt him to kill him because he's a nobody with no family. That was what I was led to believe. And that's what I picked up from the show. So I think that you and I picked up two very different things. I'd love to know what everyone else's opinion was as they were watching it.
Yeah, see, the reason why I find that so interesting is because I thought it was really obvious what was happening. And I figured it out before halfway what was going on. And so that's why I was like, oh, it kind of just played into exactly where I thought it was going.
I figured it out about halfway, but I think the setup of the friendship, I felt something different to what you felt.
All right. Well, anyway, that's my unsubscribe for the week. I know it's being like one of the most viral and like widely watched movies at the moment, and it's been very, very loved. I did not love it. I kind of got to the end of it and I was like, that was weird and obvious, and I want my hour and a half back now. I wish I'd watched something else.
The only thing I've heard about it, I haven't watched it yet because I don't have the internet at home right now, but I've just heard that it's like sick.
It's
sick. There are scenes in there. I mean, I cannot put any of my personal thoughts onto this. I've just heard that it's weird. You have to be careful who you watch it with because that can get awkward, and that there are scenes in there that are like purely sick.
Just don't watch it with your mum or your dad. And then don't go and have a bath afterwards. Anyway, okay.
All right, let's get into the questions.
All right, question number 1. I have a beautiful friend. She is married and in a same-sex relationship. She has one toddler and is pregnant with her second baby. Both of them share the same biological father, a sperm donor. I recently became good friends with a different mum friend through my husband, and her baby is also the product of a sperm donation due to her husband's fertility issues. All of that is amazing, and I am so happy for everyone, but the kicker is that the two children of my two different mum friends look identical. I'm talking eerily similar. Both are pretty vocal and upfront about their IVF and sperm donation stories, and the donor information they have shared with me so far is crazy similar. I won't go into too much detail for you, but essentially the donor is the same nationality, the same height, the same age, the same hair color, eye color choices, etc. Do I bring it up with either of them? It seems entirely possible, but I don't really know what to do because the kids look so alike.
Oh, we have never had a question like this.
We have never had a question like this.
This is a very tough one, but you, Laura, have a friend in this situation.
Well, this is the one that Britt and I kind of got into a bit of an argument, but a heated disagreement about.
It wasn't either. We just disagreed. It wasn't any. You're making it sound like we had at each other's throat.
So I have a girlfriend. Her name is Jess. She's recently had a baby with her partner Vanessa, two of my closest friends. They've gone through and chose to have a known sperm donor. And so I called Jess because I was like, this is a conversation which, I mean, we can give our opinions on, but we're not living this. And I think it's very easy when you're on the other side of it to go, should I have this conversation with them? Shouldn't I? And not to say that my friend speaks for any same-sex couple or anybody who has gone through the donor process, but I do think that she had some very important points to make. And so I wanted to play her response for you.
I don't really see the point of bringing it up with either of them. Like, both of them are obviously in complete family units. Like, the straight couple is obviously a complete family unit. The same-sex couple is a complete family unit. I think for a lot of people, the reason that they go with anonymous sperm donors rather than known donors is because they're not interested in having an extra third party in their lives. And so the fact that they have a sperm donor becomes pretty inconsequential. It's not something that they think about. It's not something that comes up day to day. So I guess this reminder, both for the gay couple and the straight couple, that they were unable to start their family on their own, it's unnecessary and potentially even a little bit painful. It's really hard to say, and obviously it depends on the couple, but I'd say they probably don't really need or want this sharing of information, not to mention the fact that they probably don't even know the name. The question of knowing the name of the sperm donor, when you go through a sperm bank, you actually don't even get their name or photo. You just get a baby photo and some medical history. That's it. So unless they can match up the baby photo and see if they have the same one, it's potentially just going to leave a bunch of unanswered questions anyway. So, I mean, yeah, depending on the friendship, it might be worth bringing up, but I just don't really see the point.
One thing I wanted to flag before we get into fully unpacking this and like getting your opinion, Britt, or like how we would navigate this if we were in the situation, is that in the question, it says biological father, right? The biological father in reference to sperm donor. Now, one thing that Jess mentioned after we had this conversation, and I think it's so important because it can be so easy to say the wrong thing without meaning to say the wrong thing, without meaning no offense, because clearly the question wasn't written with any offense in mind. But I guess it's that whole adage that once you know better, you do better. Jess was like really specific around saying that if you're going to talk about someone's donor sperm, don't talk about it in relation to being a biological father or a dad. Just remove father, dad from any type of dialogue that you have around this, because that's not what they are. They made a sperm donation and those two things are completely separate. And that can be really invalidating to any family who's been through the process of sperm donation or egg donation as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point to think about. It's a really good point for you to bring up, Laura, and for Jess to have brought up, because when we were talking about this, I was also referring it to as like, biological father, sperm donor. I was putting them together without even thinking that could be offensive or not the right thing to say. But I totally understand why it is, because we know what a father is and should be. And at the end of the day, they did do a sperm donation and then that was their relationship finished. Like there is no relationship, which I think is really important to note. It's a really tricky one, and we definitely disagreed wholeheartedly at the start, I will say that. And then after hearing Jess's opinion and her voice message, I totally get it. I totally get what she's saying. I think for me, it's such a tricky situation because she's saying that she has two very good friends that she sees often. I mean, if she's written this in, she genuinely thinks they could be from the same donor. I guess the question she's facing is, A, will it be offensive or bring up something or be hurtful? B, what if they're in a situation where they would want to know if their child has a half sibling out there? And C, What if, I don't know, what if down the track, if they're that good of friends and they all live in the same area and the kids look exactly the same, what if down the track somehow they meet or they come face to face or they're at the same school and there are questions asked and it gets thrown back saying, well, did you know that this could have been a possibility all these years? I guess it just throws up so many questions and it's impossible for me to give a hands down answer because I'm not in a same sex relationship. I do not have a child by sperm donor. So I don't have any connection to that. But I think what I would do is like throw out a hypothetical because I think this is very dependent. There's no black and white answer. It is very dependent on your relationship with each friend and how you think they will react. And I'm hoping that you know these friends enough to have an inkling as to what they would want. Would they want to have this discussion and pry a little bit deeper, or will it just be an upset that they don't need? I think it's something that you should bring up like, hey, question. If Sammy did say have a genetic relation out there through this donor, obviously it would be like a half relation, would you want to know? And I guess that's the best way to do it is throw it in as that hypothetical, like, whoa, crazy, is that crazy? Like, would you want to know? Is that, that's what I would do. Feel it out, and you're going to get the vibe from whatever they say. They're either going to be like, oh hell no, like could you imagine the hassle, or they're going to be like, well yeah, maybe if they've got some sort of biological connection out there, that could be cool. Like, I think you just got to feel it out.
I completely agree. And I know that it's one of those things where one person's perspective and opinion doesn't cover everybody's experiences, and everybody who has gone through the process of having a donor to have a baby is going to feel differently around their own family, their own unit, their own experience, how they're raising their children, what participation that donor has in that child's life, whether it's absolutely nothing at all or whether they're an active potentially uncle figure or auntie figure or whatever. Like there's so many variations of how this could present. And so I think to give one wash answer of saying this is the right or wrong way would not be a just way to approach this question. The only thing I do want to reiterate, which is what good would come of it? What is going to be the main benefit, especially when the things that you're going off, the indicating factors are pretty broad and open ideas. They're like height, the nationality, the eye color. Let's say, okay, maybe if it was a very unique and rare height, nationality, and eye color, but if it's a 40-year-old Caucasian man who is 6 foot with green eyes or blue eyes or whatever, I would say that there's probably a lot of them out there who have donated sperm over the many years. The other thing as well to keep in mind, and I find this so interesting around like the rules and regulations within Australia and sperm donation, is that for men who are doing sperm donation, they can only donate to up to 10 families. So they're only allowed to create and contribute to 10 separate families. And that's also to like minimize any crossover. Like imagine growing up and being a donor, a child who was from a donor, and then meeting another child who was from a donor, and then it turns out that you've all got the same donor parent, which has happened in the States, and that's wild. So in Australia, there's so many more legislations and rules around how many donor families can be created. And the reason for that is to try and minimize this type of thing from being from the same small town and having multiple people from the same donor. I genuinely think if you're open enough with your friends that you can have a conversation around what they would prefer to know, exactly like you said, Britt, that seems like the safest way to go about it. I definitely wouldn't be taking it upon myself to share information that very, very well could be completely incorrect. There's a small chance that there could be this link, but you don't know how that's going to be received. And ultimately, unless you can kind of say, well, this is going to be of benefit to everyone in the picture, it's going to be of benefit to the parents because the children are too young to do anything with that information yet, then I don't think that you should be the donor vigilante and take it upon yourself to make sure that everyone knows all the information, because sometimes people going into this decision simply don't want to know the information, and that's why they've chosen an unknown donor in the first place.
Interesting.
It's
a really tough one.
Also, I would love to know if this goes ahead and you have this conversation and like, let's say that they are genetically linked, please come back and tell us what the outcome of this is, because we need to know.
I know what to do.
What?
Invite them both to like a barbecue or a party or something and let them work it out for themselves. Let them look at each other and be like, your kid looks very much like my kid.
That is fucking cruel. Do not do that. That is a terrible, terrible idea.
Get together. Yeah,
Oh my God, I didn't even think about it. I never wrote into Life Uncut. This just happened spontaneously. Don't take that advice. All right, question number 2.
I've been with my partner for nearly 5 years. It's been a super stable relationship, and he's someone that I can talk openly with about anything. However, I have begun to realize that we are super different in many ways. He's really introverted and runs out of social battery fast. He prefers staying at home and gaming with friends, whereas I love camping, going on road trips, adventures, traveling. We've tried some of these activities together and it uses up his energy pretty quick, or it just ends with him in a migraine from the sun and he hates it. I don't like gaming. It worries me that our differences will get the better of us long term, but I still really like him. For milestones such as birthdays and anniversaries, he isn't very good at planning anything or getting any gifts and says that he has no time. Are shared interests really important in relationships? What would you do in this situation? How do I know if I'm in the right relationship? I love the fact he's like, I have no time to get you a present because I'm gaming.
I don't know. I think that there's 2 ways to answer this, because it's only an issue if it's an issue to you, right? Like, you can date someone who is completely different to you, who has really different interests, who loves gaming. And if gaming's not an issue to you, and you guys are able to connect in other ways, and you get your cup filled, like, just say you love going camping or you love road trips, whatever it is, and you do that with your girlfriends and you fill your cup with your girlfriends, and then your boyfriend provides XYZ to you, different things, that's fine. But if it's becoming an issue, if you've gotten to a place where you think that the differences are too big, that you're not able to connect on anything, because it may not just be the fact that he's introverted. It sounds like it's the fact that he's not investing enough time or consideration or thought into you. So when you say like, oh, he's introverted, but then he's also really bad at this thing and this thing and this thing, you kind of haven't told me anything that he's good at. You haven't told me anything that the two of you have together that's a redeemable part of your relationship. And so I would say to you, before you make a decision that you can't be together or that like the differences are too great, I would have a think about, okay, well, what are the amazing things that he brings to the relationship? What are the things that I love about him? What are the things that we share together that are incredible, that are worth valuing? And are there more of those things than what there are negatives? And can you then therefore overcome the things and the differences that you have? That would be my very first thing to say to do.
Okay, I'm going to come in and say I'm not vibing this relationship. And the reason
that is fucking half, Britt.
Stick with me. The reason I say that is because I actually do think that you do have to have some commonality and enjoy the same kinds of hobbies. I think you do have to have that connection, because relationships change with age and what period you are in your life. Yes, you can fill your cup in other ways with girlfriends. Like, you can go camping with girlfriends because you love it and your partner doesn't want to. But that only works for so long. That only works when you're young, you're a bit more carefree, you got the time, you don't have kids, you're not married, you're not in a job that is so stressful and hectic. When you go into that second transition of life, it's different, and you don't have the time that you used to, and you need to have that connection with your partner. I truly believe that you need to enjoy doing things together. It doesn't have to be everything. Obviously, you are still going to have friendships outside of him, but I do think it's important that you find some commonality. Is he bringing what you need in other capacities? Everyone has time to make someone in their life that they love feel special. Like,
Yeah.
it's like when someone says, I've got no time to respond to a text. Bullshit. Everyone has time. If you want to do something, you can do something. If you want to make your loved one feel loved, there are ways to connect and make somebody feel special and loved that don't take a lot of time, don't take a lot of effort, don't take a lot of money.
Well, what it is, right? When someone says, I don't have the time, what they actually mean is that you're not the top of the priority list, because time is reflective of priorities. If someone has the time to do something, whatever XYZ is, that is because that is their priority. And we find ways in order to move things that are important to us back up to the top of the list. And don't get me wrong, like, there will be times in life, in relationships, ebbs and flows, where your relationship can't always be the priority. And that might be because work is really pressing, or there is something else that requires more of your energy. But even in saying that, that can't be the constant, because if it is the constant all the time, and it's something we covered with Mark Manson on Tuesday's episode, what that means is that if it's the constant all the time, it's not necessarily then the priority. But I guess I don't want to make like big, grand, sweeping statements about their relationship without having more context, because I think that there's a lot of negatives in here without adding in the positives. And sometimes we can be very negatively geared about something. We can focus on, okay, well, they didn't do this, they didn't do this, they didn't do this, but we don't actually look at, well, what did they do to satisfy other areas and other things that are important to me? For anyone who's not a gamer, when you hear the word gaming, you instantly think like, ugh, like that's so isolating. You're not putting any time into our relationship because you're out there doing this thing in a silo, which seems really antisocial. And I guess over the years, especially because I have people in my life who game and who are really into it, I also kind of understand that for people who are introverted, who are really into that world, it's not necessarily as antisocial as what one might think. It's can be a way of deregulating for someone who's introverted, or they may have friends online who they play against. So in the same way that you might go out and go to the pub, or you might go out and hang out with your friends, that might be his version of hanging out with his friends. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. It's only a negative thing if it's impacting your relationship because he's prioritizing it over spending time together. But the one thing I think is a redeeming quality is like, at least he tries. He's trying the things that you like, and whether he doesn't enjoy them or does enjoy them, like, have you ever tried gaming? Like, do you do the things that he also likes? I mean, I just don't think you have to necessarily throw the relationship away entirely before you've really sat down and gone, okay, well, is he filling my cup in other places? And is this something that I can't overcome? And if it isn't something, like if you get to the bottom and you're like, actually, we're so fucking different fundamentally as people, then I think, yeah, it's not really a great indicator for a great relationship.
No, to be clear, I'm not telling anyone to put any relationship in the bin. Like, no one's going in the bin yet.
I mean, we have before, but this is not it.
And there is nothing wrong with gaming. That these are separate issues. Like, that's not what the issue here is. The issue here is that there's just no connection. Now, I'm not saying end the relationship, but you do need to go through a bit of a process first. I think there is no reason you can't sit down and communicate. Firstly, let's break it down. Let's do you don't feel the affection, you don't feel the attention and the love. Sit down and say that. Say, I don't care that you game. That doesn't bother me. But if I'm not getting what I need from any other aspect, it's really starting to affect me. And when it's our anniversary, our birthday, I don't need big presents. I don't need big gifts, but I don't feel like I'm important. And I think you can have that conversation, because the problem in the relationships only start to intensify when you've had those conversations and there's no change. So you don't immediately, people aren't mind readers. If you're not communicating, they're not going to know. The next thing I wanted to say is print out like a humongous list of activities that you could do, different sports, different hobbies. It might be putt-putt, golf, whatever. He might love going to an arcade and you might find that you enjoy that as well. Write down a huge list, start to go through it together until you find something that you both enjoy. And if you go through a mega list and there is not one thing that you guys can connect on and he's still not putting in the effort, then put him in the bin.
In the bin. Sorry, sweetheart. You need to get in the bin now. That's it. That's our relationship.
You get in the ball.
Life Uncut said so. All right. Question number 3.
I go to a prestigious university and everyone there is well off and always very posh and well dressed. Think Rolex, Cartier, Louis Vuitton, and the works. I've had to fake it till I make it my whole way through trying to fit in. I am often embarrassed in public by my family. They're polar opposite to me and are very loud and obnoxious, very Aussie, if you know what I mean. I'm a very self-conscious person and it'll ruin my day if I think someone is judging me, and I'm scared that this will happen. I don't want to offend them and I love them, but is it okay for me to ask them to act differently and tone it down for my sake? Any help is appreciated.
Oh, I feel really sorry for you. And this is not, the reason why I say I feel sorry for you is not because of the people that your family is. It's because of how insecure you must be as a person that you feel as though you need to change the people around you. Because the thing is, every single person, everyone has someone in their family who's fucking a bit wild and a bit odd. Do you know what I mean? But they're not a reflection of who you are as a person necessarily. And there's nothing that you've said about your parents or your family that makes me go, oh, they're a bad person. That's why you'd want them to change. Or they're humiliating. That's why you'd want them to change. They say things that are racist or inappropriate. I would understand if that was the premise of it. But if it's just because they're loud and they're vibrant and they're a bit crazy and cut from a slightly different cloth to the people that you spend time with at university, I would say that that is inherently deeply judgmental, and I would be prioritizing my family over people who come from labels and brands and care about things that are extremely superficial in the long run. So I think that the place where you need to start is on yourself and is on your self-worth and is on your self-identity and it is on your values and figuring out what is the most important thing to you in life. And if the most important thing to you in life is fitting in, then this will always be a problem for you. And so that's what I think is the thing that's lacking here, not your parents being a bit crazy.
100%. This absolutely breaks my heart. Like, it makes me upset to think about this family. And that's, again, we're making the assumption that they're not homophobic. They're not racist. They're not out,
Totally.
picketing the streets. If they're just a bit of a rough Aussie bogan kind of family that don't walk around in Rolexes and Cartier, spoiler, 1% of people walk around in Rolex and Cartier. Like that is not a common thing.
It's also not relatable. Like, who fucking cares?
Who cares? And also the feeling that you have to fake it until you make it to fit in. Like, I know that that's a separate conversation here because one side of this is about your family embarrassing you and the second side is faking it till you make it because everyone else is wearing all this stuff. That is saying more about you than anyone else in this situation. You do not need fancy things to impress people, and you do not need fancy things to win friends. If in your friend group you need to have Louis Vuitton and Gucci and Rolexes for them to accept you, then you need to get new friends. And I can't stress that enough. No one is impressed by that. Does a nice designer bag look nice? Yes. Do you pick your friends and the people around you because of that? No.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this also is an age thing, and I don't want to sound ageist when I say this, but you're at university, and I know that they are very impressionable years where everyone wants to fit in. Like, everyone wants to have the friendship group and have those strong connections with their friends. And the reason why I say I think that this is also age related is because I think when I was younger, I probably felt a little bit the same. And I don't say that I ever wanted my family to change or anything, but I sometimes felt like I needed to prepare my friends for like how different my dad is, Terry Byrne, or like how, my mum can say one-liners, which I would have been like, oh my God, how embarrassing. Like, please, mum, stop talking. And I felt probably when I was younger that I needed to prepare people a little bit for the uniqueness of my family. And now as an adult, I think it comes with, and I don't want to say as an adult because you're an adult, but like now as someone who's in my 37, who has my own kids, I don't fucking care anymore. Like, my parents are so different, and we've kind of navigated the ebbs and flows of our relationship. I'm so proud of the people that they are. And if anybody ever kind of looked at them and judged them for not being as polished or the version of what they would expect, I think that says so much about the other person. And I would never want someone in my life who judges my family. And I guess for me, this probably wasn't so much around friends, but it was around boyfriends. I remember having feelings of like, oh, will my boyfriends like my family? And will I need to kind of give them a bit of a heads up around like the ways in which my dad communicates or the way in which my mum communicates, and kind of give them the backstory in order for them to not feel judgmental. And I now when I think of that, like, that's fucking crazy. And I guess like my relationship with Matt, like I never felt like with Matt that I needed to be like, hey, just a heads up, like this is what is going on in my household. And I guess it's because your family, your parents, your siblings, they are their own people and they are not a direct reflection of who you are as a person. Yes, they raised you. Yes, you are connected to them. Yes, you should be proud of them. And I would hope that they never have to change who they are, especially if they're not doing anything that's problematic in order to impress you. But the thing is like you can still be a different person if you want to from your family. And I really do think, I mean, maybe it's a case of, and I don't want to say speaking to a therapist because maybe that feels a bit much, but like doing a bit of inner work, like reading up on sort of like your own values and understanding what's important to you as a person, figuring out like, are these the type of people that you want in your life as your lifelong friends? If you feel like you're always playing a game where you have to play up being someone different to who you actually are, like, is that not going to then just breed more insecurity in you as a person? I think that they're the things that I would be really unpacking, and that would be the best place to start.
Also, there'll be plenty of people out there that'll be listening to this, and maybe they're the kind of people that you need to speak to that don't have a family for whatever reason that is, that will be saying, wow, you don't know how lucky you are. Like you do not know how lucky you are that you have a family
Who loves you.
and people that love you. And that is worth more than any Louis Vuitton bag any day of the week. Totally. I'll tell you that much.
Or a family who actually need to change. Maybe you're someone who has a family, you've come from an abusive household. Maybe you're someone who comes from a family where it is actually humiliating, the people that your parents are. And then to think that, there's someone who's wanting to change their family just because they're a bit wild. It seems really superficial when you put it like that, Britt. I totally agree. Also, I guess the only other thing to add to this is, imagine how that would make your parents feel if you were to actually go to them and say, hey, mum and dad, please, you can come and meet my friends, but just don't be you. Like, be less you, be more like this. They would feel so humiliated. They would feel so ashamed, and they would feel as though you were embarrassed by them, which you obviously are. Like, what's more important to you? Your friends perceiving you in a certain way, or the way in which that makes your parents feel? Because they're not going to be around forever. And there will be a day where you'll really, really miss them and wish that you could have them in all their weirdness for a little bit longer. So I think about those things as well.
All right, bring us home, Laura.
All right, last question. And I find this one a tricky one, being a mum myself who also sometimes gives their kid too much screen time. All right, one of my closest friends has an almost 1-year-old baby. Her partner and her are the type of people who love having the TV on in the background at their house most of the day. Think music videos or sport. It's kind of just background noise for them. I've noticed that since having their bub, they have continued to do this. I don't think that the baby is getting direct screen time, but I would say they're getting a significant amount of indirect screen time. For example, my friend has commented to me before how much the baby loves watching TV, and in videos she shares of the baby, the TV is always on in the background. Now, I don't think my friend is aware that screen time is not recommended for children under 2. I also didn't know that. So my kids are also fucked. Should I bring the screen time national guidelines to my friend's attention? And if so, how should I do this in a kind and non-judgmental way? I absolutely know my friend would never intentionally do anything detrimental to the health and well-being of her baby. But I also know that if I was doing something unknowingly that might impact my child's well-being, I would want to be informed.
I picture her walking in with like a 128-page document that's tied by string, and she slaps it down on the table. She's like, here's the national TV guidelines. I don't think you can bring the national guidelines to her. I really don't, even though you're a good, caring friend. And I also find this to be a tricky place. Now, I don't feel like I can comment that heavily because I don't have kids. So, Laura, I definitely want your opinion on this, being a mum. But I don't think it's your place to parent another person's children. And I could be getting this wrong, right? I haven't done the research into just how detrimental it is for a child under 2 to watch screen time. Like, what is it actually doing? Is it giving them brain cancer? Because there's a difference with, hey, I feel like I've been seeing you leave your child out in the sun a lot with no sunscreen on, so I just feel like that's not the right thing to do.
Like,
yes, I would be saying that for sure. If your friends letting their kid burn all the time in the sun, that's different to some background TV. So I feel like it's one of those pick your battles things. I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you reckon?
I mean, I think like heroin is worse. Look, TV time, I don't feel like I can comment because I have 2 children and they have watched and do watch TV, and the TV's on in our house, and sometimes it's background TV. And sometimes we just have the TV on with music playing because Spotify plays through our TV. Look, I think that there are lots of ways that you can fuck your kids up, and a bit of extra screen time is probably not going to do deep fundamental damage. Now, look, if you want to know the Australian regulations and on screen time, it's that children under 18 months shouldn't have any screen time at all. They should not see a TV, which is great.
Don't let them watch Saltburn.
Yeah, looks.
No
Monsters
American
Inc.
Nightmare
is also apparently inappropriate too. Learned that one the hard way. Look, I think that is It's great in theory. For a lot of parents, it's unachievable. So I would say that she's probably aware of it. I would say she probably knows that it's not the best thing to do. And all you bringing it up is going to make her feel super judged.
Yeah, totally. And I just tried to imagine if I came to your house one day, Laura, and brought that up to you. If the girls are watching TV and I was like, hey, do you think that the girls have been watching a bit too much TV? Like, I don't know if you know it's really bad for them. It would not go down well. And I know that. I just know that you'd be like, well, you fucking take them then. What do you want me to do? Like, I think pick your battle. I don't think this is your battle.
Also, I think about me growing up. Like, yes, we didn't have tablets. My mum didn't give a fuck about screen time. That TV was on from the second we woke up until the second we went to bed. I'm talking all day, every day. She never stopped me from, I was watching South Park when I was 7. Like, I'm fine, guys. Everything is fine.
I was actually the opposite, come to think about it. We had screen time and I didn't really think about it till you were just saying that. So we actually did have that enforced as kids, but that's when we're older and like fucking just this isn't I just don't think this is a battle. I just don't.
I think about my mum and like my mum was a single mum of 3 kids. That's why the TV was on all the time. She couldn't manage. She wasn't managing. And so like it was a way of keeping people occupied, knowing that they're in a certain room that they needed them to be in. And
look it just you worked out like relatively fine.
Everything has been semi-okay so far. Like
you're like a solid 5 out of 10.
100%. Like room for improvement, but that's always a good place to be. I like to think of myself, things turned out better than they could. And that's always a positive.
That's a positive.
Anyway, guys, I hope that's a takeaway for you all today. Also, let us know what you think. If you disagree with anything that we've said, if you would approach it differently, and I think especially the screen time one, I'd be so interested to know from other mums how you feel about it or what you would want from your friends, especially when we laugh, but especially when it does come from a well-meaning place. But that is it from us, guys. If you have a question that you want to write in to Ask Uncut, send it to our DMs on Instagram. Just put Ask Uncut at the top and you might make it on the podcast for some very unqualified advice from the two of us. Send them in. Also, if you have an Accidentally Unfiltered for our Tuesday's episode, and you guys can subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, go and press that little plus button because that would help us so much. And you'll also get the episodes in your library every single time a new app drops. All right, guys, that's it from us. You know the drill.
Okay. Don't forget, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends, and share the love because
we love love.